started building that team with the draft. He formulated the drafting system they had down there, come out of his brain, and they started drafting players. And, you know, 6, 7 years there in the playoffs, and that was a miracle what the guy did down there. And he started off with absolutely nothing and built it up to become what it was.
Your first year there, I believe, was Don Meredith's last. Could those guys have been any more polar opposite, Meredith and
well, they were polar opposites, you know. And but you know, Tom's drafted him #1, and Don Meredith, see, he had the misfortune of being at the very beginning of the Cowboy. I'm telling you, here's all what Meredith was playing with and around for his first 4 or 5 years. He got his butt beat all the, you know, whatever, because they didn't have enough players to protect him. They didn't have the skill and all that. And he was throwing back there and getting hit and knocked around and, you know, beat up. And so the time I got there, he'd been through the mill pretty well. But he was one of the greatest pure passers that I've ever seen throw. I mean, he could do them all, and when he threw it, baby, he hit it 95% of the time. He was a great quarterback. Had he been in some system where he would have been healthy, you know, I mean, he could have probably played 15 years, and no telling what he would have done. He was so beat up physically after 4 or 5 years, it ended his career short.
Raymond, do you get a sense of any pride with John Ogden going in this year, and just your history, obviously, in Baltimore, and knowing what the fans there think of football?
Well, you know, I really have been away from Baltimore too long to really know much, you know, about the Ravens. I know that their owner brought me back up there a couple of years ago, and I attended some functions. I got to know them, and I've been following them, you know, close ever since. But I don't really feel a lot of connection with the Baltimore Raven team, except the fact that, you know, interestingly enough, you look at the history of Baltimore professional football, and the key thing is ownership, leadership. And here the Baltimore Colts had it, Carroll Rosenbloom, and now they got it. And that leadership and ownership there in the Ravens, you know, twice, they're way ahead of the game. They got some of the best leadership in the NFL, no question about it.
How much do you enjoy being around this weekend and bringing in new members into the Hall of Fame? And do you give some guys advice? Do you get to talk to someone?
No, you know, we don't really have any opportunity to give them any advice, which is probably a mistake, because a lot of these young guys could get some very good advice. The experience of coming back here, I mean, I look forward to it every year, because you just don't get a chance to see people that mean so much in your life. You know, this is once a year. I mean, I walk in the room and my memory bank starts flowing, and I just get overwhelmed as I look at this guy, remember that game, or wherever. You know, every time I look around at one of these veteran players, I have memories that come flowing back. And it's just it's a very emotional, meaningful experience, and not anything like it in any of my life experiences like it. That's why I keep coming back up every year, because you know, we're all dying off, so you don't have that many years to continue it.
Raymond, you were played in the greatest game ever played, and you talk about memories coming back. You got to refresh Frank Gifford's memory that he was tackled short of that first down.
Well, Frank, you know, they just had the misfortune of John Unitas. Simple story. No Unitas, you know, Giants win again. Unitas, they picked the wrong day, the wrong quarterback. He was the difference. And, you know, you're talking about what Unitas did was against the #1 ranked defense, against the #1 defensive brain in the NFL, Tom Landry, running their defense, and I think they led the league in defense. Unitas, you know, I would say Unitas and Weeb Eubank is what, you know, did the Giants. Weeb Eubank was our head coach. And I look back over all my years of being around the coaching business, and my dad was a Texas high school football coach, and he, and matter of fact, he and Weeb were very similar. Basics, simplicity, and soundness. And that was what our offense was, and that's what Unitas operated. That translates into the athletes' flow at absolute full throttle, as opposed to a complicated system, too much stuff, thinking too much, and the athletes get governed.
Has the team ever had 5 Hall of Famers at those skill positions with Unitas, Lenny Moore, you, Mackey?
I don't really know, the numbers on comparison teams, but that's exactly what our offense is composed of. It's five future Hall of Famers, and on the offense, quarterback Lenny Moore, Jim Parker, myself. It was quite a. But you see, that came out of Weeb Eubank's draft analysis. He's the one that formulated the drafting system that brought these players. He's the one that picked up Unitas as a free agent. And Weeb Eubanks put that team together.